Imagine that you are at a dinner party, but imagine that you're not in the publishing business. You are normal people, and who look remarkably like stock photography models. And imagine that somebody says this: I'm writing a book. Now picture what people's reactions are to this person who says, I'm writing a book. Right now, there might be like a little, oh, it's kind of exotic, a little, hint of obsession. And, people know it's going to be kind of a hard thing and a creative thing. But generally, it's kind of, whoops, my slides are failing. It's kind of a positive thing, the writing a book part. People kind of generally think that's kind of a cool thing. But imagine that right after the person says, I'm writing a book, they add just these 3 words. Okay, think about your reaction. Me too. Think about your reaction. It's not very positive, right? Ranging from, skepticism would be like the kindest thing that people could say. And the weird thing is, like, picture their thought bubbles and picture your thought bubbles. Think about the reaction that you had to that. And this is the business that you're in, right? Everyone's okay with this? So this is a big problem. Now, this is exactly what happened to me. I went to that party, and I'm the one who said, oh, I'm going to write a book for the money. Only it wasn't just me. It was also my husband. We were both victims of the dot-com crash in a horrific way. So we both lost our jobs in 2002. Well, actually, 2001, but we kind of clawed our way through. And I mean, we had no prospects because everyone else who was a software engineer and programmer at the time, unless you were brilliant, all of my friends, we were all looking for jobs. We had no options. We also had 2 teenage kids and a dog. So we were really that desperate. And we found a publisher who would take a chance on us, but this is what he told us. And we thought, well, okay. But this was the reality. So we decided that we needed to come up with some kind of a formula because we were that desperate and we were that clueless. So we said, well, we have to come up with a formula. We have to figure out something that we can do to make this happen. Sorry. But this is what everybody else was saying, that it's just luck. In the end, you do the best you can, and it's just luck. And I have to say, I know there are some people in this room, including some from my own publisher, who actually still say this. So this was not acceptable to us, because we thought, well, if it's luck, we're in really big trouble, and I cannot believe that it's all going to come down to just luck. And then this is today what people say. So since we were engineers, we said, well, that's ridiculous. This is the social media fantasy of today. That doesn't give us anything that we can reverse engineer. If it's really about luck, which we did not believe or we refuse to accept, or fantasy, something that has no common sense, you can just out-friend the competition on Twitter and you'll be fine. We said, no, we're engineers. We are going to find a formula. We had no idea what it was, but we looked and we thought, well, there is a continuum for any particular category that people put books on, ranging from, I'm not going to take this book, to I'll do anything to get this book. And we kind of realized that it wasn't about just pure quality. I mean, there are some really, what we would technically think of as high-quality books that people weren't buying. And then there were some books on the really desirable end that didn't fit in the definitions of quality that we're used to. But we knew whatever it was, the goal was to push things up that end. But we had some constraints. For one thing, marketing, probably not. We weren't thinking we were going to get any marketing budget. There would be no book tour. There would probably be no ads. There would be just the usual thing our publisher did. We didn't really have any talent. And we were not celebrities. We didn't tweet. We didn't blog. We didn't do any of those things. So those were our constraints, but we still believed. Oh, and it had to be sustainable, right? It couldn't be some trick of, search engine optimization or a big, campaign that would get a big spike on a bestseller list and then it would vanish. Because we didn't need money. We needed job income. So we needed to be able to sustain this. So we did find a formula, and this is what happened. So you know how Amazon, in the rankings, they tell you now the number of consecutive days on the bestseller list. So in the computers and internet category, which is a very big category, we have the number 1, number 2, and number 5 books currently that are the longest running, highest number of consecutive days on the bestseller list. In our own personal category, this is the one that had 2,000 currently selling books at the time, which was Java programming. We are still number 1, number 3, number 4. At one time, I think we had the top 5 of all the Java programming books. Over 1 million copies sold, blah, blah, blah. Amazon rankings, at one time, we had 3 books with a combined total of under 100 in Amazon rankings. So that sounds pretty interesting. Sorry. But, oh, and lots of cheese sandwiches. And I think we are the second most profitable book series for a publisher. But one big problem, remember we didn't have any talent. And the other problem was that this is not scalable. But we had a perspective. So we had a perspective, and we thought, all right, well, we could use this, but it's not scalable to implement until now. And that's why I decided now was the time to come and talk about this, because the new environment has created a situation where suddenly it is. And so I'm going to talk about exactly what that formula is and how it applies to so many things. But because we make books, this particular series that we made is unusual. People tend to get distracted by that and think that it's about the format. And it's not. That's why I'm pointing to our number 4 book is pretty much the most boring-looking textbook that you could ever imagine. And if you open it, it's just words with a tiny handful of pictures. So this is not about format. This is a high-level formula, and it applies specifically for us, nonfiction, but I've also been told it really applies to fiction, too, with just a little bit of creativity. So this was the question. What has to happen? Well, we do know social media has changed things, but it's not this fantasy. It's this. It's readers talking to readers, that now there is a way for books to become really discoverable very quickly if they meet the criteria, and this is what our formula kind of came down to. And we started focusing on the people. What is it that the readers are actually doing that causes that book to be desirable? Remember, in the absence of marketing campaigns that were going to do it for us. So what could we reverse engineer? Shrinking the role of luck. Okay, pop quiz, and then I'll tell you. This is a little very unofficial, very unscientific study that we did, and if any of you know what my answer to this is, then don't reveal it to the person next to you. We looked at the content of Amazon reviews and said, which is better when you're looking at a book among 5-star reviews, so only among 5-star reviews of top competing books. We wanted to know if there was any difference in the way people described the book on Amazon. So given a category, which happened to be our category, we looked at this. So think about that for a moment. Do you think it's the book, or do you think it's the author? Do you think either of those made a difference? Well, it was secret answer C. That it was neither of those things. It didn't matter if people talked about the book or the author. And certainly nobody talked about the publisher. They were talking about themselves. So in reviews, and this isn't a marketing thing. This isn't to imply that because those reviews exist, people are reading the reviews and then saying, I'll buy the book because of that. This is more a reflection of what the book did for people. They were using first-person language. They were talking about themselves in relation to what they got out of that book. So we decided we don't need to reverse engineer successful books and authors. We need to reverse engineer successful readers. What is it about people who have this experience? What is that experience like? And can we learn to create it? And that led us to, well, we got to reverse engineer passion, which again it is something a geek would actually think. So because people with a passion will not shut up. And that's what we needed. We needed people to be talking about it. Now, this is what we mean by passion, though, because I know that word is used a lot. We mean it in a very specific way. It's the kind of passion people have. Some of you I know are into digital photography. You might understand this. It's the kind of passion that people have where they're so into something, they're so absolutely into it, they're always learning and growing and finding out more about it. So we thought, we'll study that. We'll study what are the attributes of those people who have a passion for something. And of course, we found a bunch of stuff, and Sometimes we do whole day workshops on all of those things. But there's only one that really matters. And it's across everything you find where people have a passion, from sports to causes to anything else they might be interested in. You always find this, that people are kicking ass. They are getting better and better and better at something. It could be they're so into sci-fi and pretty soon they are learning to speak Klingon. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. And what is most compelling, and the neuroscientists can help explain to us why this is, they're having a higher resolution experience about whatever the thing is. People who know more about jazz music, right? They put the headphones on, they hear things I'm not capable of hearing. They perceive more. It's as if the music has been remastered because they know more. This is the night sky, except not in New York City. That would be way too many stars, right? But there's some stars up there. This is what, most people see, but the more that you understand, that you have learned about the night sky, suddenly it's as if the sky itself has changed. It has higher resolution. So high-res, deeper, richer experiences. And of course, who does that better than books? I mean, this is what we're about. We can do this. So we thought, all right, people do not continue to have a passion for things they suck at. Now, they might get through the early stages, but they won't stay passionate about something they suck at. And there are an awful lot of books that make people feel like they suck. Right? And it's only one short hop from, oh my God, I'm reading this, I must be stupid, I suck too, and therefore so does the author. So desirability means reader kicks ass. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, something we can work with. So we're going to reverse engineer reader awesomeness. So what are the key attributes of a successful book? We said that doesn't matter. We want to find out what is it about those readers. Because it doesn't matter that we've exposed readers to our awesome content. That doesn't mean anything. It only means something if they do something as a result, if we produce a change in the reader in some way. And again, I'm not just talking about nonfiction. You've all had experiences of being changed even by fiction. So what happens when the clicking, page turning, swiping, what happens when that's done? What's the next thing the person does? That's what matters. What do they do? Who do they talk to? What do they create? What do they produce? How do they behave? So a long time ago, I taught new media studies at UCLA Extension, and the exercise that was 50% of my students' grade, this is long before I ever thought I was actually going to write a book, and before the TV show 24, but we did our 24/7 surveillance tracking exercise, where they had to write a report which described in great detail what would happen when they put a high spy surveillance and tracking device on their readers and users after the experience. They had to tell me what changes in that person. What do they do differently? How many people do they tell? So if it's that simple, why isn't everyone doing it? Well, this is where the problem is. It starts here. It starts with this reaction. Now, the reason it starts with this reaction and the reason it's a problem isn't strictly about the money. It's about why do authors even bother to write a book then? Right? Okay, you're not going to get cheese sandwiches. We're going to make that painfully clear. And now look at the acknowledgement section of many books, right? So much so that this is now a cliche. So, this is the author's spouse. Oh, the only way you can hear from Daddy because he's writing a book is to listen to his audiobook from last time. Let's see. This sounds awesome. This is great. Yeah, well, I'll write a book. Oh, don't forget the extra 10 pounds. So I should write a book because this is what we tell people. This was really funny. So this is nothing wrong with what this woman actually said. I mean, what she's saying is what everybody says. Oh, be the expert, right? Let's see. The other one is new experiences. My favorite, because this hasn't happened to me, well, until today, of course. Hang out with interesting people and increase your influence. These three things were actually said by somebody who was a speaker at an earlier TOC conference. This is why you should write a book. All right, leads to this. The saddest Venn diagram in the world. Now, because it is a conflict of interest. Now, we don't think it is. I mean, most people think, well, wait a minute, isn't it in the reader's best interest to have a quality book? And that's also what's in the author's best interest, assuming they're going for credibility and visibility and all those other things, and to be considered an expert. And you all have read enough books to know that's not actually true. This is the problem. This isn't a conscious choice, by the way, that authors and editors are making to say, let's just make the reader feel stupid, right? And in fact, many times we're trying to do, and I know how hard this is, we're trying to do the best for readers by making the highest quality book. But what we're putting in it, in the back of our mind, we're thinking about what our reviews are going to be and how people are going to view us, what they're going to think about us, because there is no other benefit to writing a book initially. This is a problem. For me, the books I've edited, the books I've looked at, I would take out at least 50% of the stuff that's there to make the author look good. Again, not intentionally against the author, because my husband has ripped out 50% of what I've done for the same reason, and I'm trying hard every day. And put in the other 50% that actually produces a change for the reader in whatever way that is. So this is desirability. How do we get there? The purest way is to find a way to align the goals of the author and the reader. And we have to get over this somehow freakish distaste for sales, right? Given that you're in this business, you of all people, you need to be saying, yes, this is about sales. And if you're uncomfortable with the money, tell the authors they can donate it. But that is the purest way, because we know that sales are connected to a result for the reader. And of course, royalty doesn't work, because this is what everybody told me when I said that before we wrote our first book. Before we even knew what earn out meant, right? And they're like, you have no chance. I wondered why I kept asking about royalty, and people kept saying, why are you asking about that? Why would you even care about royalties? It's just get the best advance you can, because that's all you're going to get. So author motivation has to change, or nothing else will. We have to find a way. It's not luck. We have to find a way to align the author and the publisher and the reader so that their goals work together. And that's one of the things that's so beautiful about the new environment. Because, just one possible thing, I'm not suggesting that, but O'Reilly, I wouldn't mind if you did. So finer-grained content, for one thing, right? The pool of people who are willing to sacrifice their family and their free time and their life for a year in this soul-sucking experience for which they won't make any money, but they might get visibility. Finer-grained content means we can pull from a much greater pool of people who have the opportunity to do this. Now, just imagine, this is a little bit far-fetched, right? I hear writing a book is like going to a spa. Well, as crazy as that sounds, have any of you ever talked to any authors who went and did a project for lynda.com, which is extremely profitable from what I've heard? Right? They come back, they got a massage and stayed at a B&B, spent a few days, did the project. It's possible with these new models. This is possible. Now, that's in the extreme. But we have to do that. So what are some tips for implementing? And it starts with this one simple change, which is a relentless focus on readers as users. And this, I've seen people start to make that transition as we go to digital, like somehow, if it's digital, they're a user because there's a user interface, but if it's book, they're a reader. No, they're all users, because users focuses you on something that the reader actually does, something that's useful, usable, user-friendly. It's a tool. These books are tools. I don't care if they're brilliant novels, they're still tools of change for the reader. So what's your self-promotion strategy? That's absurd, because the passion has to be baked in. It's not something that you do afterwards by tweeting a lot. So we have a series of questions and exercises that we use for authors to help focus their brain. Every page we ask, how is this helping the reader user kick ass? Don't make a better X, make a better user of X. So for example, with us, it was don't make a better Java book. If we focus on making a better Java book, that will give us a product that might be a beautiful, high quality, crafted, sits in a museum somewhere, but if our job is to make a better Java programmer, that might affect 50% of our content and 100% of the way we actually do it. Don't make a killer book. You know where this is going. Killer at what? This is another factor that can make a huge difference, right? We have the topic. We have competitors who've written on the topic, and it doesn't matter what size is who. But none of that matters, because what matters is the bigger, cooler thing, the context in which those things live, because that's where passion is. So if someone's writing about a topic and they're leaving out the really cool, exciting context in which a user wants to actually do something, they don't just want to know about it, they want to know about it for some benefit to themselves. So whatever that meaningful context is, so this is one of the exercises that we would give to our authors. This is an example just so you can get a feel for the problem, and because it's a slide that I've decided I'm devoting my life to. So even though this, strictly speaking, doesn't have to do with books, this is what's wrong with so many products, but it's also what's wrong with so many books, especially anything having to do with nonfiction, is that, for example, before, we have all the big, beautiful brochure that focuses on photography, the thing people want to do. Afterwards, after they pay their $2,500, we give them a manual that focuses just on the tool, not on what they actually want to do with the tool. And a lot of books, of course, are produced the same way. But what's the distraction here that's not important is it doesn't matter that the brochure is all slick and color and high production values and that the manual isn't. You could reverse that. It's not even about the production values. I mean, it's not that that has no value at all, but what matters is the brochure is about taking killer photographs, which is what I want to do, not, that. So think of higher resolution like a superpower. We say, I don't care about your TOC, I want your map of superpowers. How is everything you're putting in the book helping the reader? And of course, none of that matters if you don't motivate them to do it. Tim Ferriss, you all know about Tim Ferriss. So this is a really hilarious thing I saw that I spit out my coffee, literally. How Timothy Ferriss hit the Amazon bestseller list, and it was about his self-promotion. Now, there's tons of people who've done enormous amounts of self-promotion, and it hasn't mattered. There's no question that he does a lot of self-promotion. In fact, he's the one who actually, claims that that's really helping. Now, I know Tim, and he actually came to a workshop of mine many years ago on how to create a nonfiction bestseller. He didn't need any help from me. Here's what's going on. Me personally, Kathy Sierra, in the last 2 weeks, I lost 5 pounds on this book. And actually added a mile to my daily run from this book. That's why it's a bestseller, because it actually works for a ton of people. And all over the internet, people are not talking about how great the book is. I mean, they are. But they're talking about what happened to them, what it did for them. That's the focus. And if we can create that for people, then, we can all kind of be superhuman. And finally, write for your audience's audience. And what I mean by that is, instead of asking, how can we get more interesting comments on our blog? Or for the author asking, how can I get more interesting comments on my blog? How can we get more of an audience? What if you were writing for your audience's audience and said, what if my book is actually trying to make the reader get more interesting comments on his blog, get more interesting comments on his Flickr photo? What are we doing to enable the reader? And, we can't reduce luck to 0, and we can't guarantee, there are a lot of factors. But we can make such a tremendous difference. Now, having higher resolution is like a superpower. And no one does that better, in my opinion, than the book industry. So we are literally changing the resolution of the real world. And I'm really proud and honored to be part of it. So thank you.